Rishipara of Monohorpur. Monohorpur is a village of Joshore, like any other village in Bangladesh. Approximately 2,500 families live in Rishipara. A walk through the trail will give you a picture of the daily lives of the inhabitants, joyous and peaceful. Lily Begum lives in this village. She begins her day by sweeping the courtyard. Then she feeds the cattle, releases the poultry from the cages, and sends her daughter to the school. As a whole, Lily leads a secure life.
আমাদের একটা ছাগল আছে, গরু আছে। আমার স্বামী এখন কাজ করতে পারতেছে, কারণ এখন কোনো সমস্যা নেই। কারণ আমার বাচ্চা কাচ্চা বাথরুমে যেতে পারতেছে, কোনো সমস্যা আসছে না, এবং আমরা বাচ্চা কাচ্চা নিয়ে কোনো রোগ বালাই হচ্ছে না। এক বছর আগে আমরা ভালো ছিলাম না, জলবদ্ধতার জন্য। বর্ষা যখন বৃষ্টি হয়েছিল তখন আমাদের বন্যা উঠে গেছিল। বন্যার পরে আমরা ঘর বাড়ি ভেঙে চুরে কিছুই ছিল না, আমরা কাউন্সিলে চলে গেছিলাম। কাউন্সিলে যাওয়ার পরে 2 মাস 3 মাস মতন ছিলাম। তারপরে আসিয়ে এক চালা দেওয়ার মতন বাচ্চা কাচ্চা নিয়ে বহুত কষ্টে থাকতাম।
Almost the same picture can also be seen in Shubornobad village of Shatkhira. Here, Nur Jahan's family has started a fresh life after getting a new home. Their previous dwelling was washed away by floods in 2011. Even a year ago, until 2011, as many as 72,284 households, comprising approximately 198,754 individuals of Shatkhira Shodor, Debhata, Tala Upazila, under Shatkhira district, and Keshoppur and Monirampur Upazila under Joshore district were passing their days in utter misery. Yearly floods and subsequent waterlogging caused by barriers against natural water flow of rainwaters alongside the banks of Kapotokko River severely affected food security, living conditions, drinking water and sewage system of these areas. 18,486 homes in the affected areas were completely washed away by the flood. To redress the ongoing and future sufferings of the families mentioned earlier, the UK aid allocated £10 million, approximately 130 crore taka, for the provision of flood-resistant shelter and safe sanitation. This project, called FRESH, Flood-Resistant Shelter Project, started its implementation by 6 international NGOs, namely Action Aid Bangladesh, Care Bangladesh, Concern Worldwide, Islamic Relief, Oxfam GB, and Solidarities International under the umbrella of NARI Consortium. This was a 14-month project which started from February 2012 to end in March 2013, with targets of construction of 12,073 family shelters and equal number of hygienic latrines in 28 unions of 5 upazilas, namely Shatkhira Shodor, Tala and Debhata of Shatkhira district and Monirampur and Keshoppur of Joshore district. The The activities that were planned under the FRESH project were construction of 12,073 disaster resilient sustainable family shelters and 12,073 hygienic latrines, enabling them to cope with recurrent floods and waterlogging. Education on hygiene promotion, advocacy for excavation of Kovidok and Betna rivers. At the outset of the project, 3 model shelters have been constructed under supervision of project engineers within its working areas. Following a standard based on the models, the consortium members chronologically carried out the project activities, which included selection of beneficiaries, formation of local management committees, LMCs, supply of construction materials, construction of shelters and latrines, training on health hygiene issues, and formal handing over of the shelter houses. In selecting the beneficiaries, the project ensured a completely open and transparent approach. Each consortium international NGO member, its local NGO partner, and local bodies jointly made a primary list. After endorsement by local government representatives, the list was posted in a public place. Complaints or comments on the list then were registered and investigated. Results of these investigations were incorporated into the lists to make it final. Beneficiaries selection criteria. Vulnerable families severely affected by floods and waterlogging and their houses fully damaged. Households with disabled and many dependents and no means of income. Neglected or marginalized communities and families with pregnant or lactating women. Poor female-headed households and children or elderly-headed households with no income source. Displaced and presently living in temporary places at relatives or other houses. FRESH project emphasized and ensured highest level of participation of women in its implementation. Further, the project also advocated for empowering women by giving them the ownership of the shelters. The project formed Local Management Committee (LMC) in each village, comprising local elites, UP members, school teachers, etc. Women participation in the LMCs was ensured with reserved positions so that the gender issues could be addressed in all aspects of project implementation. A total of 254 committees were formed within the larger operational areas of the project. It may be mentioned that the LMCs were the main actors at the grassroots level to take overall ownership of the project. For smooth implementation of the project, a group of committees worked closely with FRESH field team from head office level. Central committee was formed to purchase 3 key shelter materials: CGI sheet, MS bar and cement. Hired suppliers or contractors purchased other construction materials such as bricks, wood, sand, mason, etc. locally and delivered to the doorsteps of the beneficiaries. Prior to construction, engineers marked the highest flood level and earthen plinth rose up to 3 feet from the ground level. In all cases, it was ensured that the plinth top was 1 foot above from the highest flood level. The beneficiaries were involved to raise the earthen plinth with proper compaction, and they were paid 2,385 taka for this purpose. Groups of masons and carpenters worked on brick wall, pillar erection, wood framing, door or window, and fence fixing, as well as fixing the roof. frontline field staff, project engineers and management staff, along with local people or beneficiary, were involved in quality control processes. Families moved in as soon as the shelters were completed. Beside each shelter, a ventilated improved single pit latrine was built, comprising 7 pieces of concrete rings, 1 cc slab with plastic flushing pan. Pit bed is not sealed, but the joints between the rings are sealed with cement sand mortar. 20 inches layer of sand was provided at the bottom of the latrine to avoid facial infiltration to groundwater, as in wet season groundwater rises up. A unique shelter handover certificate has been generated and printed, where beneficiary is the first party and implementing organization is the second party. As agreement to some written conditions, both parties sign the document. The FRESH project also focused on reducing morbidity and mortality rates of the community during floods. FRESH included hygiene promotion activities in its implementation design. Consortium Secretariat arranged 3 days TOT for hygiene promoters, who were mostly the frontline staff in the project. Community health volunteers were hired for 2 months to supplement health or hygiene promotion courses, following a module developed for this project. To enrich local resources and safe exit of the project, at least one LMC member from each area received 1.5 days basic hygiene orientation. Each beneficiary received at least 6 hygiene sessions in the field, covering the training module that was developed by the Consortium Secretariat. Different visual tools were also introduced to make it more communicative. Monitoring and supervision had been the basic element of the project. Different layers of monitoring system were established in this project. All consortium members as well as Secretariat have practiced their own monitoring mechanism to evaluate the project performance in collaboration with implementing organizations. 6 consortium monitoring associates, CMAs, were engaged with 6 international NGOs to receive feedback from the communities and collect monitoring data. The LMC in each village was closely involved in the project in terms of monitoring and supervision of quality of materials and workmanship.
11,092 families, the project has reached 12,073 families with 12,073 latrines and shelters, and it was a tremendous success despite all challenges and disruptions. Now, these families who received shelters and latrines are secure, and they are confident that whatever comes next, flood, waterlogging, rain, they will be safe in their new shelters, and they can even provide space for the others who did not receive shelters.
ঘরগুলো টেকসই এবং এই ঘরগুলোর সবচেয়ে যে উল্লেখযোগ্য দিক সেটা হলো বন্যায় যদি ঘরগুলো ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হয়ে যায় এর যে উপকরণগুলোর কোনো ক্ষতি হবে না, আবার এগুলোকে অ্যারেঞ্জ করে আবার নতুন করে দাঁড়িয়ে যাওয়া সম্ভব হবে, অল্প খরচের মাধ্যমে রিহ্যাবিলিট করাটা খুব সম্ভব হবে।
A number of innovations and good practices of beneficiaries and implementing organizations were observed during the implementation of the project. Beneficiaries, with their traditional knowledge and financial capacity, tried to improve their shelters, and in most cases at a nominal cost. For example, the innovations are window shed for rainwater protection. To make provision for sunshade or rainwater protection, On top of the windows, the beneficiaries of the Action Aid Bangladesh project area have built fences with cut pieces of bamboos to hang above the windows with GI wire or rope. Tar painting coats on bamboo, wood and metal items. To protect the beneficiaries from early corrosion and deterioration due to moisture and insect attack, the project also introduced tar paint coating on the bamboo fences and wood and metal items. Betel nut trees for extra protection to fence corner joints. To reinforce the fences around the shelter house and protect the exposed part from getting deteriorated, the beneficiaries also planted betel nut trees on the four corners of the bamboo fences. Polythene sheeting underneath the floor soil. To protect the earthen floor from getting wet and unhealthy due to flood waters, the beneficiaries spread polythene sheets 5 to 6 inches underneath from the top of the floors. Additional wood for window joint. To make the window frames tightened and strong without any spending, the beneficiaries also added extra 4 pieces of wooden batons outside the window border above bamboo fences. Using group approach. To quicken the construction progress and fight against the challenges, group approach was adopted using social bonding.
11 জন মিলে একটা গ্রুপ আছে আমাদের গ্রুপে কাজ করে আমাদের অনেক উপকার হয়েছে টাকা পয়সা খরচ হয়নি কষ্ট কম হয়েছে যারা বৃদ্ধ আছে কিংবা গর্ভবতী মহিলা যারা তাদের কাজ আমরা 10 জনে মিলে করে দিছে 11 জন মিলে আমি নিজে গর্ভবতী ছিলাম আমার যে কাজটা আর যে 10 জন তারা সবাই করে দিছে আমার কোনো কাজ করা লাগেনি গ্রুপে কাজ করে আমাদের অনেক উপকার হয়েছে
Shelter floor with brick layer. To ensure dry environment inside the shelter, beneficiaries upgraded their shelters with their own cost, laying an extra brick layer on top of earthen plinth. False ceiling underneath the CGI roof of the shelter. To avoid heat in warm weather or cold in winter, beneficiaries added an extra false ceiling underneath the CGI roof of the shelter. Dashboard checklist. To measure the quality of the shelter construction practiced by Oxfam GB, objectively, a dashboard was used as a monitoring tool. The partner organization staff visited each and every shelter with a pre-selected checklist. Field findings helped Oxfam GB to recommend the vendors on the construction standards before the final payment.
On behalf of the recipient families, communities and people of Bangladesh, we gratefully acknowledge and thank the contribution of the donor UK Aid from DFID for this great project that has allowed families to live in peace, security and joy with a good future. Now, the only issue is that the project was able to provide this support to 60,000 of the flood victims and the remaining 40% families did not have received this kind of support who are still in dire condition. So we all have a responsibility to think what can and should happen to them.
In fine, we recall 40% of the flood-affected people who were left without any support from the fresh project in the implementing areas due to resource constraint.
সবার ঘর দেশে আর আমাকে দুই দুকোন বাড়ি তলায় নি বাচ্চা কাচ্চা সব জলের তলে তাই আমাকে এখন ঘর দিলে না
আমাদের ইউনিয়নে এখনো কিছু লোক আছে যারা মানবতা জীবন যাপন করছে এই ধরনের কোনো প্রকল্প আসলে যেন আমার ইউনিয়নে সেই সমস্ত লোকগুলো এই প্রকল্পের আওতায় আসে বা তারা যেন ঘর পায় এই অনুরোধ রইল
They are still living under substandard housing conditions. They are still struggling out there with lots of hardship and passing days in a hope of getting humanitarian support. Sustainable solutions will prevail when the natural drainage system will function again. The government of Bangladesh has taken initiative to dredge the Kabadak River silt, which is slow in progress at the moment. Kabadak riverside inhabitants do not want to experience the same wretched fate again.